A storm had broken over the plains the night before, wild enough to tear shingles from roofs and scatter fences like cards. By dawn, the world smelled of iron and wet dust, and the sky still hung heavy with leftover thunder. Elias Hart rode back from town through the ruins of his own land, his hat pulled low, his coat clinging damp to his shoulders. The storm had taken his best mare, his fence line, and the last of his faith in good fortune. He was 35, long past the age of believing that life owed him kindness. The barn leaned against the wind like an old drunk, its wood swollen and splintered. Elias pushed the door open, and the hinges screamed like something alive. Inside, the air was thick with damp hay and the faint sweetness of animal breath. He lifted his lantern high, its glow slicing through the dim like a knife. All he wanted was to count what remained, to know what the storm had spared. Then he saw her. At first, he thought it was a trick of shadow, a shape fallen from the rafters or a bundle of cloth soaked through. But the lantern's light reached farther, found skin, the curve of a cheek, a hand curled against the hay. A woman lay there, asleep or dead, wrapped in the scent of earth and rain. Her hair spilled dark and heavy across her shoulder, a single white feather caught in the braid as if the night itself had marked her. Her dress, blue with faint threads of gold, was torn at the hem, her bare feet streaked with mud. Elias's first thought was danger. The storm might have driven her here, but there were men in these parts who'd hunt a woman like her just to prove they could. He set the lantern on a beam and crouched beside her, searching for breath. It came slow but sure, stirring the straw. Relief swept him, quiet but deep. He should have woken her, should have sent her away. But the sight of her stopped him. The exhaustion carved into her face was not of one bad night. It was the weight of years carried alone. He knew that look. He'd worn it himself after burying his wife 5 winters back, after watching his home fill with silence and dust. He whispered without meaning to, the words slipping out like confession. "What kind of storm found you, girl?" She stirred then, lashes fluttering. Her eyes opened, dark, sharp, unafraid. For a heartbeat, neither moved. She saw the man before her, tall, sun-carved face, lantern light painting gold across the lines of his jaw. His expression held no threat, only wonder and a guarded sorrow. "Where am I?" she breathed, her voice rasped thin by wind and weariness. "My barn," he said softly. "You were sleeping in my hay." Her gaze flicked toward the door, measuring escape. He noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands trembled though she tried to hide it. "I'll go," she murmured, already pushing herself upright. "No," the word came quicker than he meant. He steadied his tone. "You're safe here. Storm's not done yet." She hesitated, then sank back, eyes never leaving his face. "Safe," she echoed, as though testing the word for truth. They sat in silence broken only by the creak of wood and the slow drip of rain through the roof. Elias found himself speaking, not to fill the quiet but to hold it gently. "You came a long way, I reckon." She didn't answer, only looked down at her hands, mud-streaked and cut, and said after a while, "Far enough that I don't look back." Her name, he would learn later, was Ayanna, but that morning she was only the mystery that fate had dropped in his barn. He poured her water, left bread on a crate between them. She ate little, sipping as if each swallow cost something. As the morning stretched, light seeped through the boards, painting their silence gold. The air grew warmer, calmer. He mended a bridle just to keep his hands busy. She watched him with cautious eyes, studying the rhythm of a man who had forgotten company. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier. "You're kind for someone who lives alone." He gave a half-smile. "Loneliness makes a man polite." A faint laugh escaped her, small, surprised. It was the first sound of life he'd heard in his barn for months. Something in his chest loosened. Yet behind her brief smile, he caught the flicker of fear still clinging. She glanced toward the open slats, the horizon beyond. He followed her gaze, saw nothing but wind and grass. But she whispered then, almost to herself, "They'll come looking." The words landed like a bullet without sound. Elias looked back at her, the stormlight pooling in his eyes. "Who will?" She didn't answer, only lowered her head, hair falling forward, and for the first time he saw the bruise along her collarbone. Old, yellowed, shaped like fingers. Outside, thunder grumbled once more in the distance, rolling closer as if the heavens themselves were listening. Inside, Elias' heart stood very still, realizing the storm that had wrecked his land had brought something far more dangerous to his door. By nightfall, the wind carried voices. Not gentle ones, the kind that scraped across the land like knives dragged through gravel. Elias heard them before she did, low and distant, the cruel laughter of men who'd long forgotten mercy. He stepped outside the barn, lantern dimmed, and saw 3 silhouettes cresting the ridge, riders with no patience for law or decency. Their shapes wavered against the dying light, each one a reminder that the world beyond his fence was still rotten. He returned inside. Ayanna was sitting where he'd left her, hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the door as if she could already hear what he did. Fear sharpened her features, but it was not the kind of fear that crumbled. It was the kind that burned slow, steady. "They're here," he said. The words were quiet, but they split the air like a blade. She rose to her feet, trembling once, then stilling herself. "I told you they'd come." "Who are they?" "Men who think the world belongs to their boots." Her voice carried no tears, only the tired resignation of someone who had run too long. "They took from my people, burned what they couldn't own. I escaped. They don't forgive that." Elias's chest ached with the weight of her calm. He'd seen what men like that did, how they smiled when they broke what they touched. He thought of his wife's grave, of how little he'd done when sickness came for her. He would not stand idle again. "Stay here," he said. But she caught his wrist. "You can't fight them." "I've been fighting ghosts for years," he replied, pulling free. "These ones at least bleed." Outside, the night grew thick. The riders called his name now, mocking, bold. Elias stepped to the door, voice steady as he shouted back, "Ain't nothing for you here." A silence followed, too long, too heavy. Then a gunshot cracked through the dark. The bullet tore a hole through the barn's outer board, splinters flying like sparks. Horses screamed in panic. Ayanna ducked low, but Elias didn't move. His lantern swung, throwing wild shadows over his face. "You need to go," he said again, though now his voice had softened. "There's a creek behind the ridge. Follow it north until the trees swallow you." She stared at him, eyes wide and wet. "And you?" He gave a small, crooked smile. "Someone's got to make sure they don't follow." The next moment passed like thunder. She stepped close, close enough that he smelled the earth in her hair, the rain still clinging to her skin. "If they kill you," she whispered, "they kill me too." Something inside him broke, quietly, like the sound of dry wood snapping. He lifted his hand, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, and for a breath's width the world went still. No storm. No fear. Just 2 people who'd both forgotten how to be seen. Then another shot rang out, closer this time. The lantern shattered, plunging the barn into darkness. Elias grabbed his rifle. "Run," he said, but she didn't. She moved beside him instead, eyes glinting with stubborn fire. "Then stay behind me," he murmured. The riders' voices grew clearer, taunting, cruel. "Hand her over, cowboy. Don't make us take her." Elias's jaw locked. "You'll have to walk through hell first." They fired again, splintering the door. He returned one shot, measured, precise. One horse shrieked, the others scattered. Dust filled the air. The world roared with chaos, but through it all, Ayanna stood motionless, her hand pressed to his back like a promise. When silence finally fell, only the wind answered. The riders were gone, swallowed by night or mercy, he couldn't tell which. Elias lowered the rifle, breath shuddering out of him. The barn smelled of gunpowder and rain. She turned toward him. "You could have died." He looked at her, eyes hollow yet alive. Then maybe it would have meant something again. Her hands trembled once more, not from fear, but from understanding. the kind that binds strangers faster than time. He started to speak, but she touched his arm gently, stopping him. You gave me safety, she said. Now let me give it back. Outside, thunder muttered over the plains like an echo of all they'd survived. And as the sound faded, she whispered words he almost didn't hear, words that would change everything he thought he knew. They weren't hunting me, she said. They were hunting you.